What is your bias? Equity coronation, to be or not to be?
Hello, Chakabassis. Welcome. Thank you for joining me, Nigel Cecil, assisted, as I invariably am, by my very good friend Hilary, and together we endeavour to reflect the views, comments, observations and questions sent in by our regular viewers, our fair-minded and equitable friends, many of whom are engaged in showbiz, the industry, the biz, and some are members of Equity. Equity, the trade union for professional actors, variety entertainers, and other creatives across the United Kingdom. Now, anecdotally and factually, there's a perception that cancel culture now has great influence within showbiz and also within Equity. And some of you are fearful of putting your head above the parapet, which is why we do these things on your behalf. Because if you often said to moi, at our age, being cancelled by Equity, cancelled many years ago, what does it matter? But we do endeavour to put the facts forward equally and fairly. But we don't profess to always be correct. We endeavour to be correct. We do our best, but don't take it as being gospel, because we're just hoping to stimulate some discussion and get your feedback as to what you think. Now, the last two videos have actually been about Equity. Sometimes we digress to other topics at your suggestion. Indeed, the previous video, thank you for the notes, was all about urging you, if you're Equity members, to stand for one of the committee elections, one of the national committees. Some of you have said, Nigel, there's no point because we won't be welcome within Equity. The ideology that now pervades Equity doesn't make us feel welcome. But of course, if we do nothing, if you do nothing, what's going to change? So please, feel the urge, as you said, Hilary, and stand. And also, we then did the video which mentioned about Londonderry, the annual Equity conference taking place in Londonderry. Wonderful to be able to go to Northern Ireland. We've always had a great reception when we've worked there, haven't we, Hilary? But how do you get there? It's going to be a mammoth operation. And then finally, to our surprise, because we hadn't thought about this one, a couple of you got onto us and said, Nigel, is someone planning a coronation at the representative conference, at the annual conference? We said, what are you talking about? Well, it appears that the timetable for the election of the Equity General Secretary means that the results, the person who's got elected, even, as we've said before, to be or not to be, we don't know at this moment in time if there's even going to be an election. Has anyone put in their nomination to compete for the post against the current incumbent, Paul Fleming? We don't know. But whatever the outcome, it says in the timetable, apparently, that the result of the election, the ballot of all the members, is going to be announced to the council at the annual conference in Londonderry, then presumably acclaimed by the members who were there at that conference. I think we said, Nigel, is this a coronation in the making? This opened some lines of thought amongst all of you that, quite honestly, we hadn't considered. So we're going to have to do this in a few topics, slowly put it forward. And the first aspect we're looking at, why can't it be a coronation, is the idea of bias. What prompts the idea of some of you thinking it's a coronation and others saying, why not? Now remember, these are just our thoughts. We're not claiming to be right one way or the other. But just look at these when it comes to bias. All the different biases Hilary has written for moi, and these are not all of them. There's others you might not even think of yet. So what is important in this list and what is missing? Can you think of anything that's missing and what's important? You see, all these, apart from one, are obvious. obvious what they mean, but what's the one that's not obvious? And how could it possibly relate to your organisation, yourself personally, not just equity? The one that's not mentioned, we'll come to that, but this, we think, with our ideas, is unconscious bias, because with all those biases we've just mentioned, maybe you are unconsciously unaware of what bias, well, you don't know about. And there's one on there that doesn't get much mention. In fact, it wasn't on there, was it, Hilary? Did you spot it? And is this a reason why some of you are thinking, well, there's going to be a coronation, and others may well be saying, well, why not? What does it matter? And that is the need for all of us, including what? Confirmation. Confirmation bias. Wherever we are in our lives, we want someone to say, you're looking good, that's good, what you're doing there is good. Confirmation. Sometimes we do things for our own pleasure. We're not looking for confirmation. Indeed, if I was looking for confirmation, Hilary and I together for this channel, we'd say, why the hell are you bothering? Because we've just managed to achieve over 100 subscribers. But some will say, you haven't got thousands. But it's also like someone doing their garden. They don't tend the garden and the plants because they want thousands of people to come and see their garden. It's nice to have the neighbour pop round and say, well, that's all right, but they do it because, well, it's creative. It passes the time. It's wonderful to see the results, even if it's only one person responding. So confirmation bias. Now, how does this apply to an organisation like Equity, or any organisation for that matter, or a political party? The more important someone considers themselves to be, and they're not quite sure, they need the confirmation to acclaim them, to say, look, this means I'm important. So some might say, and we're not suggesting this applies directly to equity, we're just using it as an example. Some might say, well, if you're a bureaucrat and you're the chief executive and you're getting paid a lot of money provided by members of your organisation, we need confirmation bias to say, well, you're doing a jolly good job, equally with the political party, equally with the king, equally with anyone who's putting themselves forward as a leader. If they are not sure of what they're doing, or even they want to pander to the traditions, the pageantry, they need that confirmation bias. So when you look at something like equity, is the General Secretary or those promoting the General Secretary looking to have confirmation that, well, they are a brilliant leader? We're making comment not one way or the other. We're leaving it for you to decide the reason as to why it should be acclaimed, put forward at the annual conference, because it's never been arranged this way before for all the years we can think of. And you've researched on our behalf within equity. Is it because that confirmation is needed? When you look at it, analyse it, to have an election for the General Secretary on its own costs some £70,000 to send out the postal ballots. But yet the President, who is the representative of all the membership, some 50,000 members, well, their election is included within the council elections. And the percentage return for the council elections, when you look at all the bundle of information, some will say, I can't read all this. I don't want to read all this. So the President tends to get the highest return, but overall the returns from the membership are only about 8%. But that's, of course, it's included with all the bundle. But the General Secretary election, elections go out on their own. And it's only a yes or no, isn't it? Only between a couple of candidates. It's easy to vote, easy to understand, and it's promoted on its own. So some will say, look, the General Secretary, and we're only taking this as an example because it's before us, check whether it applies to your organisation. The General Secretary got a 16% return of the membership when the voting was taking place, and 69% of that vote. But look at the President. The President only got elected by a return of some 7 or 8%. So the President isn't as important if you're looking for confirmation bias as the General Secretary. Is that correct? Think about it. That's what we mean about confirmation bias. Leaders in political parties, they want that confirmation that they're doing a good job. But is even while doing a good job? Because when you look at my figures, there's only a few subscribers. Hit the subscribe button if you're tempted, because we will reflect your views, comments and observations. But of course, it leaves us then with this confirmation bias. Do you think, when you think about it, the elections for the General Secretary should be done on their own? They could in fact be included. I mean, it might take a little tweak of the rules, but they could in fact be included with the committee elections or with some other elections. So it's not costing, to be or not to be, if they are taking place, so many thousands of pounds for that one position. Think what can be done with that £70,000. We'll leave this thought with you. Confirmation bias. And our fair-minded and equitable friends have come up with lots of other things as well about this issue, the General Secretary. The elections, to be or not to be. Do have an opportunity, you can make one for yourself, to have a look at the equity rule book. But we will try, won't we, Hillary, not to be too boring about it. But someone, if we can remember it correctly, have said, Nigel, you ought to finish off with, well, a phrase. So are you ready for this one? The person who sent it in knows exactly what they're suggesting. To each and every one of you, good art, good work, and you better keep your fingers crossed if you're in showbiz. To all of you, professional solidarity, and fingers crossed until the next time.